LifeHakx. Technology, business, multimedia, wellness and health, events, reviews, and more. LifeHakx. This is Mary Collins from LifeHakx Media, and I have the pleasure to have Dr. Mario Martinez online with me today. Hi, Mario. How are you?
Very good. Doing well. Thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
It's a pleasure. And so I will just tell our listeners a little bit about you. Dr. Mario Martinez is a clinical neuropsychologist established in biocognitive science and went to the Biocognitive Science Institute in 1998. He developed a theory of mind-body culture that he calls biocognition to suggest how cognition and biology co-merge with their cultural history in a bioinformational field that seeks maximum contextual relevance. His theory of biocognitive science is based on research that demonstrates how thoughts and their biological expression co-emerge with cultural history. So this is, really a fascinating subject as you kind of delve into health and all sorts of things. But with that, tell us a little bit more about how and why you became a clinical neuropsychologist.
I was always very interested in how the mind works. But I also wanted to know how the brain works. And in neuropsychology, unfortunately, you study the pathology of the brain, most of it. So when something's not working, how is that going to be affecting you cognitively or emotionally? And that's what I learned in clinical neuropsychology. So we dealt with people who had strokes and then cognitive rehabilitation, diagnostics, and that type of thing. Mm-hmm. But after a while, I thought that was just too depressing. And I wanted to find out what happens when the brain is working well. What happens when things are working well? And there's too much emphasis on the stress hormones, not enough emphasis on what I call the causes of health. Mm-hmm. So that's what got me into it. And then I was fortunate enough to meet Dr. George Solomon, who was the founder of psychoneuroimmunology. And he was my mentor and taught me how mind, which would be cognition, emotions, how it affects the regulation of the nervous, immune, and endocrine systems. And that's what psychoneuroimmunology is. And there's a lot of research, over 40 years of research. But what I'm doing is I'm taking it to the next level, which is the cultural component. So I call it cultural psychoneuroimmunology, and that's what biocognition is. But basically, the idea is to find out how can people live long, healthy lives? Because that's what I think it's all about, quality. And what I've done is for the last 15 years, been studying centenarians, people who are over 100 all over the world, mm-hmm. who are healthy. And I found, to my surprise, and to the surprise of other researchers who have done the same thing, that genetics is only 20%.
Wow.
The rest is what you do with the way you deal with the world and what you eat and everything. But it's more than what you eat. It's mm-hmm. just your perception of the world and how you interact with challenges.
Okay. And so that leads into the research in PNI, and explain to the listeners what PNI is.
It's a psychoneuroimmunology, and it's also called psychoneuroimmunoendocrinology, but it's really basically studying how a thought, how emotions, how the way that we process the world affects our biology, especially the immune system, and especially the nervous, of course, and endocrine system. So, for example, just to bring it down to earth, there's a lot of research that shows that if you get stressed, you will secrete cortisol and epinephrine and norepinephrine. That will create a fight or flight effect, which means that from way back, either we fight or we flight. But that suppresses the immune system because it's saying fighting a beast or fighting something out there is more important than fighting pathogens or digesting your food. And then when the danger is gone, then we can go back into doing immunology again. But we're the only animal that keeps ruminating about what happens, even after it happened. A zebra, after the zebra runs away from the lion, goes back to eating, and there's no concern there. But somebody gets it in front of you in the middle of traffic, and not only do you get upset, but you can't wait to get to work and tell people what happened to you. And what the system is doing, the mind-body code, is that the brain interprets it as you still having that kind of problem. Cognition knows that it's different, but the brain is still secreting cortisol and secreting, and then your friends will out-victimize you and tell you, oh no, what happened to me 3 days ago two cars got in front of me, and then the whole day becomes an invitation for stress hormones.
Wow, I never thought about that, but that is so true. I was speaking to a trauma specialist, recovery specialist, and she was saying that she's like, we're going to talk about this trauma once, and then that's it. Because if you keep talking about it, you literally are reliving it. And of course, with the imagination, it just gets stronger and stronger. And like you said, releases these bad hormones that are good for escaping or fighting, or but not good if you're sitting down just talking about it and rethinking it. So tell us a bit more about the mind-body code and some perfect hacks, for an example, that would help with the mind-body code.
Well, I'll call it intervention because the immune system does anti-hacking, so you got to be careful. But anyway, the idea is that you can't tell yourself, okay, relax. It doesn't work that way. If it worked that way, you could say to a depressed person, don't be depressed. It's such a pretty day. Okay, I'm not going to be depressed. Or cocaine. Don't use cocaine because it'll kill you. All right, I'll stop using cocaine. It doesn't work that way because those are thoughts, and the brain doesn't communicate that way. So, for example, if you want a mind-body code for safety, is not to say I'm safe, but just to have your back lean against something solid, or know that there's something solid behind you. And then the brain knows, okay, this is the mind-body code for safety.
Oh,
things like that. So that's one of the. So what the brain does is anything that you repeat, it'll consider it to be important for survival. If you repeat bad things, it considers it important for survival, and it makes it a priority.
Wow.
And then cognition, what cognition does, cognition says, okay, since this is being repeated, how can I find some reasoning to support it? So, for example, if you say that the world is bad, and you repeat it and you repeat it, then cognition and perception will look for things to confirm that the world is bad. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. You say, look at all the evidence. Yesterday, there was a car accident in India, and somebody got raped in France. And so it's a perpetuation of something that is being repeated because the mind-body code assumes that those things are important for survival.
Right. And that's almost like a gambler, isn't it? Where they find the luck in something, or the schizophrenic who finds the reasoning behind things that are not necessarily in any way connected. It becomes fractured. The mind becomes fractured, and then the body suffers with the mind. So when talking about your the Biocognitive Science Institute, tell us a bit more about the workshops that you offer and the help that you can offer, whether it be online or in person.
Well, I think you're going to find this interesting because it's very unique. One of the things that we do with organizations is that we teach, whether it's an organization of 100,000 employees or 50, we teach them how to make decisions the way the immune system does. The immune system makes 150,000 decisions a second. It's doing it right now without you checking anything. It's not centralized. It's what Candace Pert called a traveling brain. So there are ways to make decisions under adversity, even if you have 100,000 people working with you, because we have 50 trillion cells in our body. And you are the CEO of 50 trillion cells. And you don't have to connect the brain and say, do we attack this with a neutrophil? It doesn't do that. So that's one of the things that we do. And what happens, though, is when you teach that method of what I call empowerment code, not only do you become more effective as a leader, but the health of the organization goes up because you're working compatible with how the immune system does. And the other thing is we train people to, for example, in your profession, let's say you're a journalist and you want to use biocognition in your journalism. Well, then we do mentorships for doctors, attorneys, anybody, to teach the method of living like centenarians. So that's, and then the other one is we teach people what I call guardians of the heart, which is a model of relationships, again, based on evidence. I study people who have been together for 40 years and they still laugh at their jokes and they're healthy. Well, that's a good relationship. So I study what have these people done, just like the centenarians. What have they done to do this? And then based on that, we teach guardians of the heart.
Okay, so there's some interesting courses, and then I assume that these are online courses, or do you actually have workshops in physical places as well?
They're online, but I also now that things are opening up, I was in Poland for 3 months, 3 weeks,
Mhm.
doing some work with a longevity center over there. We developed a new test to identify how close you are to centenarian thinking.
Okay, and speaking of which, when you talk about the culture aspect of it, how do our cultures affect our lives? And in actual fact, is there a danger to highlighting a culture? I mean, causing that kind of segregation that I'm different because I am of this culture. Is that dangerous, or is that actually beneficial to the human populace?
The more you identify yourself with something other than someone else, the more you separate yourself from someone else.
Mhm.
So the cultures, basically the way to look at it is that there's a world out there, and we can interpret it in many ways. You can see a good tree or a bad tree or whatever. And what the culture does, the culture weaves a fabric around the
Mm.
world, and you see the fabric like a fishbowl effect.
Mhm.
And one culture will see someone being thin as attractive, someone being heavy as attractive.
Mhm.
Some cultures will say if you go out in the rain, you'll catch a cold, and you will. It's because the immune system is paying attention.
Mm.
So the culture is really the collective belief about everything that's important: ethics, aesthetics, longevity, aging, all the things that are important is what a culture is. But it's a very, very collectivist kind of thing. And you think you're seeing the world, but you're seeing the world that you were taught to see. So, for
Right.
example, just to be real specific, you can see we know in psychoterminology that when you shame somebody, they secrete inflammatory molecules
Mhm.
because the immune system is cultural. It has to respond to a cultural brain, and it learns that before it was there's a excuse me, there's a lion out there. Now you have language, and you could smell the lion. Now, after hundreds of thousands of years,
Mm.
you can say there's a lion out there. So then language becomes a symbol.
Mhm.
So if you, especially somebody important in your life, your culture editors, people that are important, teachers and parents, they say, you're so stupid, the immune system responds like it's some kind of a pathogen out there.
Mm.
So it causes inflammation to control the infection, and there's no infection. So it's biocultural, biosymbolic. So we know that. But look at how the culture works. If you are in a collectivist culture like the Asians, the Koreans, and the Chinese, and so forth, they have a different way of perceiving things than the individualist cultures like the United States and UK and so forth. So if you try to shame someone in the UK or the United States, you say you're stupid, you never do anything right, you'll
Mhm.
secrete molecules of inflammation, tumor
Mhm.
necrosis factor and some interleukins. But if you do it to someone in an Asian culture, they have to perceive it as you shaming the group, the individual, the
Mhm.
country, not
Not the
never the individual, the group and the individual, in
Mhm.
order to have that kind of reaction. So it's totally cultural. Another thing, some countries, for example, in South America, some countries they'll call the hot flashes of menopause. They
Mhm.
call it bochorno in Spanish, which means shame. And although the doctors know that it's hormonal, they'll say she's having symptoms of shame. Okay,
Wow.
so we know shame causes inflammation. So you have inflammation, you have problems with low self esteem, inflammation, depression, pain. And you would think, well, I guess the hot flashes are just how it is. You go to Japan and they call it konenki, which means a second spring.
Hmm.
Self esteem goes up. They don't have any of the symptoms of inflammation, and there's
Wow.
no pain just by the
Really?
cultural interpretation.
Wow. So, what are you saying that even things like menopause? I mean, we know that hypnosis can help with things like childbirth and going to the dentist. And is this a form of hypnosis, really? Because depending on the culture, and especially in today's times where the media is more powerful than ever, and they are creating quite high levels of stress amongst communities. People are, if they're not physically ill, they're definitely on the verge of being very mentally ill. I mean, I think suicide rates are through the roof because of what's happening because of fear. Um, are you saying that that one can change just even the response of the natural aging process by just interpreting it indifferently?
Yes, it has to be embodied. It's a belief system. That's a collective belief that you have, and it's learned. So you can change because look at it this way: growing older is a passing of time. That's all you need. Today you're a day older than you were yesterday. Aging is what you do with the passing of time based on your cultural beliefs. So now, at some places like this, the Longevity Center, it's one of the best in Europe. What we're doing is looking at your chronological age. Let's say you're 30. Okay, that's your chronological age. There's nothing you can do with that. Your biological age is the rate at which your cells are aging. And you can find, for example, they did it with me, and my chronological age was, or my biological age was 18 years younger than my chronological age. So I'm aging like someone who's 18 years younger than me. And what matters is not how long you've been around, but what your biological age is, and that can be changed completely.
And do you think it is based on like how bubbly? I mean, a lot of people say that I look a lot younger than I am. And I wonder if it's because I do have a bit of a happy-go-lucky personality where I'm just really happy that if the sun shines or if it's very pretty, I'm like childlike. I look at colors and I love animals and I'm super curious about everyone. Does that maybe play into how a person ages? Like if they're very focused on, like you said, the dark and dreary or the kind of pessimistic attitude over things, does that age them more rapidly than someone who is just kind of like take it as it is, take it on the cheek?
Yes, it does. But also what you just mentioned there is one of the characteristics of centenarians. They have a high degree of novelty learning. You're a curious person. Your curiosity allows you to seek things and look at things. So that is one of the causes of health. So these things trigger the causes of health. And longevity is learned culturally. And that's what one of my books is about. And then aging is a process that's learned. But the causes of health are inherited. You inherit your causes of health, but they have to be triggered by the kinds of things that you like, creativity and things like that. But if somebody is happy-go-lucky as a social thing, not really feeling it, then it doesn't work.
Right. And
you got to
feel it. No, and I think when you were saying about the whole, like if you believe that the rain will give you a cold, I mean, I come from an Irish background and it was kind of like open all the windows. And if the person is struggling breathing, throw them in the water. And, and it's just get up, get off your, that was my mom's saying was just, oh, you're not dead, are you? Get up, get up and move on. And I wonder if that's part of the reason that, I kind of survive things because it's like, but I'm not dead, I've got life left in me. So that does make sense. And speaking of, books that are helpful to understand this even more in depth and actually get some training out of them, you have published books, The Mind-Body Code and The Mind-Body Self. So tell us a little bit more about a little summary of some of these, the material in the books and where we can get that.
Yes, they're both on Amazon and most of the stores that are, but usually Amazon's the best price. But let me go back to the rain thing so you can see how that works, and then I'll talk about the books.
Okay.
You're not just imagining something happening. There's a physiology that's going on. Now that you know that we have biosymbols, your mother, who's a culture editor, says to you, don't go out in the rain. The rain takes the biosymbol of danger. When it takes a biosymbol of danger, you secrete hormones that suppress the immune system. Then you go out and you catch a cold because you suppress the immune system. And then your mother says, you see, I told you, you can't go out in the rain. So it's a psychoimmunological process that's going on. So you have to be careful with what you say to people, especially doctors and people in positions of power. So really? the first book was The Mind-Body Code, was about really how the mind and the body communicate with each other and how the centenarians communicate with each other. And what can we learn? Each chapter has techniques on how to deal with each of the things that you're learning in the chapter. And the second book is more, it's a Mind-Body Self, is more about how people communicate in a culture, how the culture affects that communication. and how you can change that. In order to change it, you have to become an outlier. You have to come out of the fishbowl. But people in the culture don't like it when you come out of the fishbowl. So they have three ways of wounding you: abandonment, shame, or betrayal. And most people have those archetypal wounds because you've left the tribe. And especially if you're an outlier, you left the tribe. And they don't do it on purpose. They do it because they want to keep you in the collective process. If you no longer serve the collective process, then you get shamed or you get abandoned. And I'll give you an example. When I go to different countries or Poland, anywhere, I'll just ask them. I'm working with a crowd of people who are executives, and I'll say, let me tell you what the culture is. I want to know how many of you consider yourself to be honest. And everybody raises their hand. How many people here are fair? They raise their hand. How many people here are brilliant? Hardly anybody raises their hand. How many people here are beautiful? Nobody raises their hand, because those are individual. Those are not pro-social things. So if you don't think you're attractive, and if you don't think you're bright, how are you going to convey that to people? And the other thing that happens when somebody gives you a compliment, gratitude causes oxytocin, which is a really good hormone for heart regulation, all kinds of things. So what you're taught is that you're a little girl and you say, Mom, look how pretty I am. No, you can't say you're pretty. Don't say you're pretty. When they tell you you're pretty, you deny it. So if I say you're very pretty and you say, oh, well, I haven't washed my hair in 3 days, you gave up an opportunity of gratitude to increase oxytocins for the day.
Wow.
Not only that, you're excusing yourself and you're creating stress because you're saying, no, I'm not really that pretty, or no, I'm not that bright, or I'm not this or that. That's how our cultures teach us. And an outlier, how centenarians are, I said to a 102-year-old woman, you're really attractive. You're a very attractive person. She says, oh, yeah, I've always been attractive. Ever since I was a little girl, I was attractive. Refreshing. Right. That's what my mentor, George Solomon, called healthy narcissism.
I was going to say, doesn't that lead to narcissism? Because now you see a lot of these people that are like, just constantly, they go to these beautiful places and these locations, and you just kind of want them to move out of the picture because you want to see the beautiful location, but they're solid, the selfie is the face, everything is constantly in the picture. And it's just like, that can't be healthy either, or where the parents are rewarding their kids every single step of the way. Cause it's just like, what happens in those situations?
Those are self-absorbed people with low self-esteem. That's not what I'm talking about. The difference between and what he called healthy narcissism and narcissism is you'll see in a minute. I went to Cuba to interview centenarians. There are a lot of centenarians, but it has nothing to do with the revolution. The revolution has brought the lifespan down, but there are centenarians. So I went there. And one centenarian, they gave him a party. They treat him like superstars. So there were a lot of women around him. And he comes up to me and he says, have you noticed how the women are looking at me? They're in love with me. That's narcissism. But here's what inclusive narcissism means. And did you say, and he said, did you notice how beautiful they are? That's inclusive. The narcissist would say, since they're beautiful, they're in love with me, I'm going to manipulate them. The healthy says, I want to include them in my narcissism. They're beautiful, therefore they love me, and I love them because they love me. That's inclusive, and that's very healthy.
Okay, I never heard of narcissism being considered healthy, but I guess, they say the majority of surgeons are narcissists, that they have to be, they have to believe in themselves.
Yeah, but that's not the healthy narcissism. That's conceit. So Aristotle always said there's got to be a middle ground. Pride is a virtue, but if it goes too far, is conceit. If it doesn't go far enough, it's fear. So surgeons are mostly narcissistic in the sense of a sense of entitlement, but if you have a surgeon who says to a nurse, "We did a great job here. This is beautiful. You're bright, just as bright as I am." That's healthy narcissism.
Okay. This is a wonderful thing to know, because there's so much confusion around these things. And why work harder when you can work smarter and live better? LifeHakx. Yeah.
I think self-worthiness is a better way to look at it. And self-worthiness, except if I say, look, Mary, you're very bright. Why would you have to deny? You say, thank you. I appreciate that. What I say is, thank you for noticing. That's it.
Mhm.
And the reason is that nobody can tell you're bright unless they are bright. So it's a co-authoring of beauty, a co-authoring of wonderful things, and that is very healthy for the immune system. And it can tell the difference between being an unhealthy narcissist and a healthy narcissist, which I call people with self-worth.
Okay. So,
So you don't go around, yeah, you don't go around telling people how wonderful you are, but when they notice it, you acknowledge it.
and that's one of the things that you mentioned in your books. It's sort of a guide on how to, reassert yourself to be a healthy self, discover and realize your self-worth, and also to realize and understand how your environment and the culture that you're in can sabotage the best that you could be, where you have to actually look at it and decide, look, this is a good situation for me to be in or not a good situation. Which one of the books so you have the mind body code and you have the mind body self. What are the differences and similarities in these two books?
I would start with the mind body code because that's the foundation. And the mind body self takes it to the next level. They're both self-contained. So you can start with any one of them. But if you get the mind body self, that's fine, because they each have techniques. You have to teach techniques. You can't talk about a theory and tell people be one with the universe. Or what does that mean? The universe is too busy expanding. It's not going to do anything for you. So it's got to have practical applications for life. And they both have that. And they have a glossary to explain the new words because it's a new paradigm. And then if people are interested in the science, huge bibliography that you can go into. So either one would be fine. You can get them at Amazon. It's doing really well in Poland right now, the Mind Body Self. It's in Polish.
Okay. And also you have your website, which is biocognitiveculture.com. And of course, we will put these links up on lifehakx.com. That's with a K and an X. So Dr. Martinez is also available on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook with his name, Dr. Mario Martinez. So I'm really thrilled to have you on. And I would love for you to be on more shows of LifeHakx talking about the different parts of the mind body code that can help people, whether it's with their self-worth, parenting, surviving trauma, depression, whatever the case may be. I feel like this can be applied to, and health, just basic physical well-being as well as mental health. I feel like your theories can be applied in so many ways to so many people and possibly affect an entire culture and get them to heal the wounds that they think or that they have suffered from. So with your online courses, do you need specific qualifications to sign up to those courses?
No, because these are life tools for anybody. If someone wants a mentorship and a diplomate, that's usually for people who are in professions. But in general, we work with anybody for it's what I call personal development because it's an applied theory. But maybe next time we can talk about how to reverse biological age and actually look at markers, biological markers, blood work, and all that. But yeah, anybody can take these courses and these personal development.
That would be wonderful. And also you have art that's for sale on your website as well. So tell us a little snippet about the art and what made you decide to put art out there as a healing source.
Well, I've been working as a surrealist for quite a while. As I mentioned, I went to school in France for the training, and what I've done is I use neuropsychology to do my work. Usually, not all, it's all interrelated, but usually the left side of the brain is a logical, sequential, and the right side is more intuitive, holistic. So what I do is I'll take a painting or whatever I'm going to be doing with it, and I'll start working with it without any intention of what I'm doing. I just do figures or whatever without knowing it. Then after I finish it, then I go back and I ask myself, so what is this? And I look at it and look at it. And then I come up with a title and everything comes together because I made left brain, right brain together. And when you look at it, you will also have similar kinds of feelings and interpretations because I'm doing archetypal kinds of things. And I use the apple, for example. I use a lamp. I used different Don Quixote. I use them sometimes because those are archetypal, and you'll relate to it right away because of that. So I have a lot of fun doing it, and it's very therapeutic.
Okay, well, and maybe there'll be at some point you'll have like an art class that will help people express themselves, and
Yeah,
then
yeah, I do that
let them
sometimes.
see. You do?
But
Okay, well,
yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because I really enjoy the work, and it's an extensive amount of work, and there's quite a bit on the website. Some of it is available to people as limited prints if they can't afford the original or they don't want to buy the original. They're signed limited prints, so it's really a lot of fun. It's something between myself, Picasso, and Dali, and some crazy stuff in there.
sounds wonderful. And for anyone who's listening, we will definitely have Dr. Mario Martinez back online with us, and we will definitely be putting up his Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and of course his website with all of his information, online courses, extra material that he might share with LifeHakx. So thank you so much, Dr. Mario Martinez. It's been a pleasure.
You're welcome, and thank you for the wonderful work you do.
Oh, thank you. LifeHakx. LifeHakx.com. That's with a K and an X on Radio X.